apathy right now.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yep.
even got to do a little yard work after my lesson yesterday.
Yeah.
What's up, folks? What's going on, folks? We got a crew in here. It's gonna be the big, like the fullest classroom I have all day for sure, but I don't know. I haven't seen as many students in other rooms. Lucy, why don't you move up to the? Come on, why don't you come up front? This is so far away. I got my second shot. I'm feeling better today, so I don't feel as nervous about being around kids, honestly. Students.
My grandma and grandpa just got the second shot.
It makes me feel old. I don't know what I'm gonna say to that, but it's awesome. My parents got it too. Go on in, gentlemen.
How do you? I really like it.
Good afternoon. I'm gonna move you up to that seat. Or you can pick whichever one you want in the front, but just so we don't have one on the way back, right? Because we don't need to. All right. Today, it's decent. Should be somewhat, I don't know, let's say, like, it's not my job to entertain per se. Like, that's the difference in this 2020, 21, or whatever, the future thing. But we're gonna start off with announcements, word I have trouble spelling. I think there's two ends there. Then we're going to hit up our Nearpod. And then talk about homework, which is color coding the SAQ, okay? And if for those of you that didn't turn it in, at least give you a chance to do it. All right. Yeah, so until Bell gets going here, my backpack's back here. Agua is on good for the soul. Anyone been doing anything outside interesting?
I went on a bike ride yesterday.
Bike ride.
So not really interesting, but.
I didn't know. That's
Oh,
underrated,
and I
sure.
did. I wrote my SAQ on the patio outside.
That sounds relaxing. It was nice yesterday.
Yeah.
I taught a tennis lesson. Came home, played with the kids outside. My son wanted to play with the rake so bad, but I was raking up like my yard is agricultural wasteland of gumballs, sticks, leaves, and dog poop. So came home. My mother-in-law had like a shovel and was getting the dog poop out, and I was like, "I'll take that. This looks really bad," and taking care of my kids at the same time. So, anybody else? Anybody get that fishing rod out yet? Tempted. I think I might try a snake. Just kind of like scoot out during the kids' naps. Maybe hit a pond by my house for a half hour on a Sunday. That'll be the most exciting thing I'll do all weekend, for sure.
I'll go skate. I'm not sure.
Skate?
Rollerblade.
Oh, you still do the rollerblading.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That used to be a thing when I was like a kid, and then it wasn't. So
I'll probably go fish this weekend.
there you go. What body of water?
I have a slough by my house.
Slough, like on the White River?
It's connected to the lake.
Nice. What are you getting there?
We can get bass. And there's a few catfish. I've got turtles in there, bluegills.
Any crappie?
No.
Smallmouth or largemouth bass?
There's a lot.
That is beautiful. They are beautiful fish too.
I have to go buy worms, so.
Walmart. That's where I go to, the Walmart on like 75th Street or wherever it is. They always have in the winter when I go ice fishing, they have bait. All right. Those of you on Zoom, this is really weird, but there's only 5 of you. We have 4, 7, 10, 13 in class. There's more coming, but 13 is pretty full. Renshaw, have you ever had a 13er? Oh, look! I mean, it looks like a classroom again. It's wild. So, here's what we've got going on. I'm gonna start off with a Nearpod that I think is live right now, but I don't know where it went. You know how those go. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just share the screen this time. I didn't put a link to it because when I put a link to it, inevitably I have to put 2 links for 2 periods, and it's not really that efficient. So I'm going to share the screen with those of you on Zoom and those of you in the classroom, HMEKL. For those of you on Zoom in the chat function, here comes the link. In case you don't want to put HMEKL. Yes.
Yesterday when I was doing my homework, I tried to get on the earpod that had the instructions.
It wouldn't work. Yeah, I know. That's why I woke up this morning and realized that, and so I put it on. It's in the instruction. The instructions are on a separate PowerPoint in the module now. If you look, which I realized, yeah, Nearpod's cool and all, but not that cool when you can't actually go back and look at notes, right? So I'm have to do like 3 times the amount of work, but I did it 2 days in a row for everybody. So, and I know Mr. Renshaw has a fancy tool to figure that out, but I saw the look on his face. But you know what? Mr. Brunette moves with technology at a bit of a slower pace. Plus, yesterday I thought I was gonna die, and I tried to play it off because the COVID shot was one of the weirder. Second dose was one of the weird things. I haven't been sick in like 2 years. If I've been sick all winter, I would have been freaking out because I know I would have been running getting tested, right? So I haven't gotten. I didn't feel sick, and so that was the first time I felt sick in like 2 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening to my body? Pfizer vaccine.
Yeah, my grandma got her second dose of the Pfizer this weekend, and she's having like flu-like symptoms, but she's getting over it.
Yeah, I feel great today. I'm about to go run a half marathon for school.
I can't help it.
Psych.
I
No, dude, come on now. All right, so let's do the do now real quick. Most of you hopefully have joined the Nearpod. I only see 19 on here. I got 13 in class. That means I'm missing the Zoomers. Shocking. So those of you on Zoom, I think I'm sharing the correct screen. I hope I am. Katya, am I sharing the screen of the earpod with you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Appreciate that. So that means there should be no excuses. Get on right now. The code is also in the upper left-hand corner, HMEKL. And prepare to take notes, whether on your computer or handwritten. And there was someone pointed out very astutely that you can't go back and really take notes on the Nearpod until I figure out how to change the function on that by clicking a handful of extra buttons, which I'll learn. Other than that, you see the agenda. The announcements are the exact same for a good reason, because they don't change. So on the well, they're still relevant. If you're on Zoom, let's get the cameras on. I only got 4 of you. I think that's most important. I'm going to say this again. For those of you who are virtual all the time, okay, if I never see you, I really would appreciate you at least making an attempt to put your video on it, because, again, I don't even know who you are. I'm teaching to like a black screen for how many months now? Not super helpful. All right. By share hands in the room and or on Zoom with maybe just a basic thumbs up. Has anyone looked at the Barron's book online at least and considered buying it? Put them up high. We got a few on here. We got a few here. Good. Just gonna remind everybody that if you aren't taking the exam, then don't buy the book. You'll save yourself $20. Tell your parents you're gonna buy the book and use it on something you want. I don't know, but don't buy it if you're not taking the exam. That would be a waste of money. Okay, looking out for everybody on that one. Make sense? All right, nobody's on their cell phone, right? Since class started, I'm sure. Got all those put away. Awesome. I might be, unless you're video recording me to make me a TikTok or YouTube influencer, then let's put those away. And actually, after watching this weird movie last night, I don't want to be videotaped. You'll know, Renshaw, you'll know when you watch the movie. It's awkward. I don't even want to admit it out loud because some of you probably seen it on Netflix already. It's called Moxie. It just came out. Amy Poehler's in it. I'm not encouraging it. I don't even know. I shouldn't even say anything. All right. On the Nearpod screen, it says, analyze the following 2 political cartoons and explain their meaning and context of the Cold War. So, remember, the Cold War was this ideological battle, which turned into an economic battle, and like basically ideological means philosophical battle, and some wars between the USSR, Russia, and the US. Okay. All right. So we are taking a look here at the first cartoon. I want to give everybody a chance to analyze it because it's going to disappear and you're going to have to respond to a question. I will also say, when I do Nearpods like this from now on, there will always be a 5-point participation grade, and it'll let me know if you are typing answers in. Okay. And the only reason, again, I would do this is to just make sure those of you at home in particular are getting what you need to get. We're getting to crunch time now, okay? I won't always do this either, but I do like the participation. Okay, so see the Iron Curtain, see Made in Moscow. The bottom 2 guys reading says Plans for the New World. All right? So let's take a look and let's see if we can't explain the meaning of that political cartoon. What do you think? All right. So some answers that could work. The Iron Curtain essentially separates Western and Eastern Europe. That's pretty solid. Russian isn't on board with the change that's going to happen, so they block themselves off with a wall. Isolation. Good. Talk about that today. A lot of good answers here. That is solid. Okay. So we only had one non-answer. Pretty much today it's gonna be like 1.5 to 2 minute time limit, just so that we're going, or else we'll never be able to get through anything. Okay. So I mean, and I was sharing Mr. Renshaw earlier. One of the cool benefits of this is a lot of you don't like pressure, and I understand. We've had a weird 12 months, but the AP exam is pressure packed. And so if I can simulate pressure on here in just a practice mode where I'm not counting you off, or it's not worth a point on the AP exam, it's productive practice. All right. So you analyzing that political cartoon is very aligned with the DBQ and with the stimulus-based SAQ and all the multiple choice questions. Okay. I had someone ask me in class yesterday, how are we going to review for multiple choice? This is an exercise in doing that. It's skills-based. Okay. All right. Awesome. So a lot of good answers there. Let's look at number 2 here. Obviously it's on the board or on your screen. Now, you may be able to directly relate this to a term, a couple different terms, all right? That we went over in class the last couple days. So you have bombs on both sides and the saying on no account to be used because the enemy might retaliate. And you see arrows being flung across. So let's see what you think is the meaning, and if there's any vocab words you can associate with that concept. All right, so those of you typing, well, I didn't put a time on this one. That was bad. This could be related to the Cuban Missile Crisis and MAD. MAD, mutually assured destruction. Awesome. See if we got any other answers. Well, we've got the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's a good vocab drop. So waiting some people to respond. Power of the timer. Wow, is it powerful? A game of intimidation. Chicken. Who will look away and break first? Stalemate. Arms race. Awesome. Couple other extra vocab words there. Those of you who can see the screen, you're seeing I'm putting them up here. Russia had an atomic bomb in 1949. Awesome. That came straight from some of the notes or concepts we talked about. Still waiting on some responses. Remember, I'm going to get a printout telling me who responded and who didn't at the end of this. And that's where I'll grade the 5 points. So let's make sure that we're getting in a response. All right, so pretty good. Again, obviously MAD, MAD, mutually assured destruction. But I think there's other things that we could talk about there. Brinkmanship. Remember how I talked about it in class yesterday? You could have even used the kind of the Cold War in general, because the Cold War was a Cold War, even though it was pretty hot, wasn't it? Okay, so things we were looking for there. Let's go ahead and move on. So I am very aware that there's a lot of words on a screen. I was attempting to make this so that I didn't have a ton of slides because I think it's just overwhelming and kind of annoying. So let's talk about, we have 4 categories, or 5 I'm going to talk about today. They come kind of through out of as your notes, but I changed up some stuff. Soviet superpower status, Soviet culture, economy, and society, Soviet Empire in Eastern Europe, de-Stalinization, and domestic life in the Soviet Union. So basically, yesterday you were supposed to get the U.S. in like the West, and today we're going to look at how the Soviet Union differed. All right. So let's take a look at, why did the Soviet Union want to keep all that land after World War II? Well, let's go back to remembering Catherine and Peter the Great and that whole window into the West and Westernization. What did Catherine the Great and Peter want to do? What was kind of their main idea for Imperial Russia? Can anybody help me out there? You can, on Zoom, you can unmute, or in person, you can say it out loud, either one. What was their big idea? Both of them were kind of fixated on this. Jill? Making Russia like Europe. Okay, and so after World War II, there was this idea that they wanted to influence Europe. Lily Dole, thank you on the chat. Appreciate that. But at the same time, again, create a buffer zone, but this time not between an aggressive Germany or Nazi Germany or the Kaiser and the Second Reich. But this time it's to keep capitalism and Western influences out of a communist society, and obviously to spread communism. And so thus you end up with what are the satellite states. Can anybody give me an example of 2 or 3 satellite states? If I was taking notes, this is where I would be kind of jotting them down separately. Anybody want to give me an idea of satellite states? We went over them the other day. I'll give you one, Hungary. Anybody want to give me others? Or we got Romania. Okay. China was not a satellite state. Yes.
Poland, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Romania.
Yeah, so Poland would be in that, Czechoslovakia, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, all were satellite states that were influenced by the Soviets. All right, another example of them as a superpower status was the aggressive buildup of weapons and industry. Okay. And it's important to note that this aggressive buildup of industry, which was somewhat similar to how they industrialized after the Bolshevik Revolution, was at the expense of the people. Now, did it result in 50 million people disappearing? Not as many, but were people still killed for having different political ideologies than the Soviets? Of course. Were people still starved to death in certain areas? Of course, because if you're putting your resources into weapons and heavy industry, you're not putting your resources into farming and getting people consumer products. Okay, already been said. 1949, the atomic bomb. The Soviet Union, occupied the largest country in the world, the 3rd largest population, and the 2nd largest economy. So easily, I think most of you can say why the United States and the Soviet Union butted heads, right? Just even looking at those statistics. U.S. does not have the largest country in the world, did not even have close to the largest population, but had by far the largest, what? Economy. And, well, military fluctuated between the Soviet Union and the U.S. All right, so other influences, we've already talked about this, North Korea and Cuba. I wrote not China, and I wanted you to, we're going to get into that later with Mao Zedong, but the communists and the in China and the communists in the Soviet Union would have a falling out due to different philosophies. Okay. Had they become two superpowers that were aligned, we might be living in a different world right now, right? Think about that. If the two of them were aligned totally, China and Russia, they could have, taken a lead versus the United States. All right. Awesome. We're gonna keep going. Like I said, this is all on the modules for you as well under some kind of a PowerPoint function. That's a blank. Okay, why am I getting blank slides here, Mr. Renshaw? Oh, never mind. The pictures. They're just taking a second to pop up. Okay, so pictures I wanted y'all to see. Soviet tanks after World War II. This is the Red Square. I know this picture's showing up a lot blurrier than I had expected it to, but what do you notice about this? What do you see? What do you notice about this event that might be going on here?
A lot of them were like wearing blue.
A lot of people possibly wearing military uniforms. Lucy.
Kind of like the Nazis and what they used to do.
Okay, so it has kind of that feel of the Nazi like parade grounds, doesn't it? Yeah. What is this? What does this kind of create? When you have flashy symbols and you have the Kremlin in the background, which is where the government met, and you're meeting out in front of it, what's that create? Yes. Propaganda and nationalism. Good job. So, if you're taking notes off of pictures can say 1,000 words. Soviet Union was heavily influenced by propaganda from the top of the government and nationalism. All right, here's another one right here, kind of a similar picture. What do you see going on here? This is also the Red Square, capital this is like the most prominent spot in Moscow, their capital. You see the army being shown off, right? Why would they do these type of parades? I remember watching these on TV when I was a kid, being real freaked out. Yeah. Scare tactics, power protection, projection. Yeah. Yep.
I think it also could be used to like impress like the people that live there, like make them feel like protected.
Yeah, press the people that are in Russia that they know what they're doing here. You're suffering for a greater cause, right? Awesome. Good answers. I think most of you are on it. Let's take a look at this common textbook map. Why would I show you this? Somebody make an inference. That would be like try to point a reason as to why I would show you this slide. Jill.
A lot of those countries that are communist countries are not allies of America.
Okay,
I mean, of the US.
Jill says a lot of the countries shown are not allies of the United States. Yes, and if I was teaching U.S. history, that could be my focal point. That's true. What's something else we could point out from this? Did communism spread slowly or rapidly after World War II? Rapidly. I mean, that's basically the entire Silk Trade route that's all encompassed by communist government. Okay, so when we look at the domino theory, as we've talked about, or the Cold War, these are the areas that the United States and their allies lost. The dominoes fell towards the communists and the Soviet Union. All right, just wanted to show you this picture because I think it's interesting. Some of you probably know, but can anybody take a guess what this is a picture of? I'm gonna give you 10 more seconds before I call on you. Anybody on Zoom want to take a shot? Illegal. I muted one Hiddle just to have another one tell me the answer in the chat. That's outlawed. So, Ethan.
Is that the border between North and South
Yeah, good. And that's what I know the Hiddles were going to say. Is this is the border between North and South Korea. This is an older picture from the 1970s, but it also is what was called the DMZ, or the demilitarized zone, if you remember that. Yes, Jill.
Wasn't that talked about in American politics like last year or something when former President Trump was going to meet with the guy whose name I can't remember that runs South Korea?
Yeah, they had talked about trying to ease the tensions because, right?
I remember seeing this specific photo.
Sure. And I had a couple more that were like from the 2000s, but I just chose this one because I thought it looked a little more Cold War-esque. Yes.
Wasn't South, like, I feel like they did something in the Olympics together. Did they like come together and like play together?
No. No, the Olympics were in Seoul, South Korea, but no. There's not much cooperation between governments. Jill, I know what you're talking about, but I'm gonna need to look it up before I talk on it, and I have a lot of stuff to go over here. Okay. All right. So if you lived in the Soviet Union, what would have caused you to be nationalistic? All right. Go ahead and answer the question now. You notice you have 2 minutes. So if you lived in the Soviet Union, you gotta like transplant yourself to 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and put yourself in those parades. What would have caused you to be nationalistic? All right, so obviously I can share some answers, but military prowess, excitement, propaganda, big show of protection. Let's go to the end of the alphabet here. Arms race, space race. Awesome. Okay, I'm not going to expose who said that, but that's good. Propaganda, military strength. All right, so brainwashing, it's aggressive, but not ultimately untrue. Mass majority. So some of you, I think, are starting to put together that this was some of the characteristics that the totalitarian leaders used during the Depression in the 30s as well, right? Yes? Yeah. And so do you see why someone, a country or a group of countries who had a completely ideological difference would have wanted to have basically, again, the containment policy, or this would have been on the brink of war? Yeah. So hopefully this is kind of obvious to you. All right, let's talk about their culture, economy, and their society. So the culture. Most of you remember, right, that Kievan Rus. Remember all the way back to that? Kievan Rus was kind of like the stepchild of the Byzantine Empire, and they adopted Orthodox Christianity. What was the famous quote by Yaroslav or whatever? He's like the emperor, or the king of the trading post at Kiev, says he prefers Christianity to that of the Muslim rule because he's allowed to drink alcohol, something like that. Remember, like way back in first semester? That was like October, September. But yeah, Orthodox Christianity had remained in Russia for over 1,000 years. And the Soviets tried to eliminate the influence of the church, because can you have a communist society with Christianity? No way. No, not at all possible. Okay. Second thing is thought control. This is going to come in a lot of different ways. I probably say it 5 different ways in these slides now that I'm thinking about it. But propaganda and thought control starts at the youngest ages. Do you remember in the Rise of the Third Reich film when there's that small portion where the school teacher is having the students recite that awful poem? Okay, if you remember that, and again, it's this crazy thing that's ingrained in my mind because I've seen that so many times, but that's propaganda at the earliest ages creates a sense of loyalty and devotion, and you do that at a young age. You make the Western culture look frivolous. You make it look whatever. What's the word I'm kind of looking for? You make it look essentially like it's over the top, unnecessary, and then you limit people's access to actually seeing happiness in the West. Okay. So if you're not exposed to things then you're not gonna know what they are. But Russian ballet in this time period really took off. Russian ballet is extremely unique. This became one of their primary forms of art. Ballet and opera. Got a weird story for you on that one. Literature. So there were a handful of famous artists in the 50s and 60s in the Soviet Union that were imprisoned in gulags because they wrote about and they criticized the Soviet Union about the daily life. Some guy whose name I can't pronounce, so I'm not even going to waste my breath. But I've read quite a bit on him, and the Russian artists were known again for their simplistic writing about the Russian people, but they couldn't tell the truth, which is they didn't really have what they wanted. Okay, and that's communism. I mean, you get what you need, not what you want, or an advanced stage of socialism. Let's call it what it is. The economy. 50% of people lived in urban residences. I'm going to show you Russian block housing, and I think you're going to go, oh, that does not look very fun living. Okay, if any of you have seen The Bourne, I think it's The Bourne Ultimatum. I was watching that a couple weeks ago on, I don't know, they were binging on like AMC or something, and I got tied in riding my bicycle on the basement, and then all of a sudden I can't stop watching it. But you'll see the example of that. The state controlled all the factories, though. So let's say if Victoria was a manager at a factory, her directions came straight from the government, not private individuals. And so the state controlled what was made. And so I have in quotation marks toasters. Let me tell you my story about toasters, all right? Are you listening? Jackson's got his hand on his face. So is Ethan. It makes me feel like you are bored. You don't want to hear about the toasters. Toasters are interesting. Let me tell you why, okay? I'm living in suburbia Carmel. I'm in 6th grade. No, we weren't in the rich kids area. We were in the ghetto on the west side of Carmel, all right? I mean, east side, sorry. My dad was a minister. You know, I'm making $1 million. Now, I got invited to babysit. I thought it was sick. Babysitting 6th grade, put $30 in my pocket. I go over to this guy's house. I learn out that the dad is a famous opera singer. All right? No joke. Big fat dude. I mean, like easily $5 bills. But he had this voice of an angel. And he was on like CD covers and stuff. I was like, whoa. I thought it was crazy. So anyways, I asked him, he starts kind of being like, I need a babysitter because my husband's in Russia for a month. I'm like, what? In Russia? Like, I don't know. How do people go to Russia? And she told me that he had been going there since the 1980s when the Cold War was going on. So then he starts telling me that when he would go to Russia for like a month or 2 months to perform for a show, like that would play nightly, he would bring in his suitcase, he would illegally smuggle in toasters and Levi's jeans. And then his servants, the people that were assigned to him, he would secretly give them the toaster as like a thank you gift when he would leave. Or he would secretly hand them a pair of Levi's jeans because you couldn't get them. Only way to get them was on the black market. And so my toaster analogy is just an analogy for consumer goods that you like your Air Force Ones or your Pacers, Adidas jacket that, high retail probably costs $100, right? again, just everything, a lot of the stuff we have, right? It's stuff that we wanted. I mean, we need it, but how badly do we need it, you know? And again, you don't need a toaster oven or a microwave, but it's nice to have. And so, Lily Dole asked if that's why I put Levi's jeans on the chapter quiz. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably dumb on my part. Sorry. But all right. Soviet socialism. Remember, you can't have an affluent, like upper middle class in communism because there's not enough to go around, right? So it turned into a true oligarchy. Does everyone remember what an oligarchy is? You have to go back to probably like your 6th or 7th grade history, social studies, or individuals and societies class, okay? Whatever they used to call it. What is an oligarchy? Yeah, go ahead. Good. Ruled by a few people. So a small part of society was in the party, and they got to make all the decisions, and they got to control the toaster ovens. Okay, they got to control the Levi's. You know, they got to drink whatever they wanted, essentially, but nobody else really got to. And it depended on what level of the party you were as well. Lastly, then, before I show you a bunch of pictures, environmental effects of the Russian culture and economy were drastic. And if you pay attention, they're trying to reverse the course of that trend. Hi there. In the in the 2000s, really, the Paris climate agreements where every country's trying to bring down emissions, etc. But there was nothing like that in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and that's when a lot of the damage was done to, particularly like Russian soil, Russian rivers. Paid dearly for this. So, all right, one more, and then I'll get to some pictures. All right, Soviet society. So, like I already said, not just toaster ovens, but like on a more broad basis, houses, nice apartments. You only could get a nice apartment or what I call a dacha. Listen, it's a dacha. That's what I used to call I call my daughter a dacha. I don't know why I like the name. But it's a name for a Russian summer house. I know, I don't know why I call it. My wife was like, why do you say that? I'm like, I like the word. But it's the name for a Russian summer house, and you only got one if you were like in the upper echelon of the Communist Party. If you weren't, you lived in a basic apartment, and that's where the majority of people lived, and you couldn't have things. There wasn't access to them. Distractions then. How do you keep an entire population of people, the third largest in the world, distracted? You make them think that they're competing on a world level. Exhibit the Olympics. Okay? If you haven't seen the movie, again, this is a biased perspective, I'll admit, straightforward. But Miracle on Ice, it's pretty cheesy, but it's true. You know, I was talking to my dad the other day, and he was like, "Oh, 1980, Lake Placid. I remember where I was watching the game at the seminary, you know, in this 12-inch TV, black and white." I'm like, "Cool, Dad. Like the movie's a lot better." But you know, that's one of the distraction pieces was competing with the United States and West Germany in the Olympics. Obviously, we've talked about the arms race, but the space race as well. The fact that the Russians beat the United States into space was a cause for nationalism. Low birth rates. There was a lot of reasons for this, but people didn't want to bring children into this type of environment. Also, a high level of alcoholism, which resulted from mundane work. You guys know what the word mundane means? Boring, not interesting. And a lack of, think about it, a lack of consumer items with a lack of pay raise. It kind of goes back to the whole ideology of Karl Marx. To each according to their ability, to each according to their need, but it's like humans have desires for they want things. Make sense? All right. Women would work too. It was necessity, but it wasn't equal to men. And it didn't necessarily provide like a feeling of a liberal culture that had change involved. All right, based on what we talked about yesterday and your own knowledge, how was life different in the Soviet Union versus the United States? Let's see what you can come up with here. Yeah, I know I forgot a timer on this one too. This is what happens when could not work last night. Like my body was just in weird shock. And I'm a baby. But at least I got this. All right. Based on what we talked about yesterday, your knowledge, how is life different in the Soviet Union versus the United States? I think a lot of you could probably come up with 5, 6, 7 reasons, right? Poster ovens. It's like we take that for granted so bad. I think we've had like 3 toaster ovens. I've been married. I've only been married 8.5 years. All right. A lot more luxury advanced items in the United States. Much more control and overbearing sense when learning about the Soviet Union. More restrictions, very different social and economic structures, capitalism versus socialism. Spot on. Job. Let's see what happens when I press this. Oh, you can't type anymore. I'm gonna did I unshare it? Where is it? I don't even know where it is.
Just click on another one and then remember which one.
Oh.
Yeah, share that one and then unshare.
Wait, hold on a second.
Now it says in the United States.
Oh.
Okay,
Okay,
now.
that's good.
Okay, finish it up. Typing if you didn't. Oh man. That's a bummer. That would ruin my day. We got a no answer. Gotta figure out who this no answerer is. Luella, join us in our quest for knowledge, please. Thank you. Vivian, you as well, please. Finish your thought. Now, that's mean because I can figure out who's doing what. Do your other teachers do this stuff?
No.
No? What's that?
Some of them.
Yeah.
I mean this stuff.
Like, do they actually call people out for?
Oh, the Chinese teacher. She calls us cabbages when we don't know answers to stuff. She's like, you guys are responding.
Hey, Miss Schweitzer is the real deal. Don't be messing with Hong. Right? Okay, let's go ahead. Good answers, folks. We had to go back to look at that. Okay, Joe, let's stay on track here and not act like cabbages. All right. Life in the Soviet Union was more strict. American democracy, capitalist for socialism. Healthcare was better in the U.S. A lot of good answers. All right, so pictures to look at. This is what we would call Russian or Soviet propaganda. All right. The middle here, this was the symbol for their cultural, their like Office of Cultural Affairs. That would essentially their goal or their aim was to spread Soviet culture around the world, and that's why you see the globe there and not just what was imperialist Russia. Okay. Who's the picture on the left featuring? Joseph Stalin, right? All right. Let's go to the next one. This one I thought was kind of wild. Okay, you have Arabic and you have Russian on there. Why am I blanking on the script? Sorry, that's just a rule. It's not really negotiable. I'd like to have music on too, actually. Grace. I mean, which one did I say? Grace, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't. So what do we see here? What do you think this portrays? You got to make a guess because there's no English on here. Yeah.
Well, when I zoomed in, like I saw like the people walking like into the like monster thing, like they're like on like a trail and they look very just like exhausted and bored. I feel like it really shows like the repetition of the days like living in the Soviet Union.
Okay, so the left-hand side is kind of the repetition, but these people look kind of like they're working towards a higher goal, though, don't they? You see the elevated structure on top?
She was referring to the right side.
Oh, you're referring to the right side.
I was referring to like the people by where the monsters like wrap.
Okay, that monster, is that anyone know that monster? What's that an image of? Yeah. The West, exactly. But what game that you play? I'm very competitive at this game. That's Monopoly. That's the robber barons of the 20th century, Rockefeller and these guys. All right. Vanderbilt, Cornelius Vanderbilt. And so that was what the game was made up of, was these, and you'll see they're depicting the United States and the West as being capitalistic, hungry men just trying to take. You see how there's like kind of a Japanese samurai on the bottom with like a headband on and different people here saying that they're just trying to take over everybody. All right, I thought that was pretty cool. All right, look at this Soviet block housing. You may need to zoom in on your computer. But I also found this to be wildly interesting. These three, the middle picture that's kind of situated between the two on the left is in the Ukraine. These other two are in East Germany. This is, again, the style of apartments that were common in the Soviet satellite states, as well as in the Soviet Union. And then one of my favorite, stops on the train, because we take trains around Berlin, is called Potsdamer Platz. And this is what it looks like. This is in West Berlin on the right. What do you notice is the difference?
There's a lot more
Space.
It looks like in West Berlin there seems to be more like freedom in architecture.
That's exactly. Boom. That's the answer I was looking for from Miss Lane, was advancements in freedom in architecture. That's actually called the Sony. I think it's called like the Sony Plaza. A lot of famous. They have like a famous movie award ceremony there every year. Yeah.
I might be reading too much into this, but the Soviet block housing, it all looks like kind of smoggy. While in
Yeah.
West Berlin, like the sky's a bit clearer. I don't know if that's just clouds.
That's yeah. Almost, if you go to Berlin and you go to East Berlin versus West, it does feel that way because the buildings are so drab. Now, they've become really popular for rich young people to move to the East Berlin, and like it's honestly there's a lot of clubs. Like, I don't want to get into it that bad, but it's very liberal culture today, it's kind of changed completely since fall of the Berlin Wall. But they keep a lot of these buildings up as a memorial, and there were so many of them that can't take them all down. People still live there. All right. Let's look at, this is the environmental effects. You can see a Russian factory that's on a river. Huge pollution, air pollution, like I said, water and soil. Have you ever heard of Chernobyl before? Okay, nuclear reactor exploded, and kind of the before and after. Again, you need to zoom in here. One of my favorite shows that I've watched in probably the last 10 years was the River Monsters episode, when they went in and fished the lakes around Chernobyl, because no one has been there and lived there, and there were like just these huge fish, because they weren't sure if they would have genetic mutations or not either because of the radiation. But that's just kind of an example of reckless use of technology and industry. Yes.
So there are like animals that live in Chernobyl.
Yeah. Well, it's in the water, so
Oh,
they weren't sure how much they were affected. I'm sure there are animals there now. But again, nuclear disaster. All right, so continuing on here, oh gosh, Soviet Empire in Eastern Europe. Got to continue quickly here.
Basically, they forced communism on these satellite states. So they rigged elections. Political opponents were killed or put in prison. There was elections, like I told you, but they were single party elections. So it might be 3 men running on the exact same platform. It wasn't Putin, but it was like 3 people that sounded just like Putin, you know? I mean, it was the same people essentially. Massive propaganda used. I haven't had a few experiences with Latvian people since my family heritage and gone out with them before. They had to learn Russian in Latvia. They had no choice. You learned Russian as your second language, kind of like some of you maybe in 1st or 2nd grade started Spanish, or some of you started, I think, Chinese. There's a program in Washington Township, but it was sorry, I'm resuming the share here for those of you on Zoom. I'm trying to. I don't know what happened. 1 second here. So you did not have a choice. You had to learn Russian. And that was part of their idea of advancing communism in their culture. Also, the KGB, that's their secret, their CIA essentially, was very active in these satellite countries to put down any type of revolts.
What's it stand for?
Again, I'm not
It's a really
great at Russian.
complicated Russian
It
word.
really is, exactly. All right. Last one here. Or 2 more I gotta hustle. So de-Stalinization, Stalin died. He had been the autocratic ruler for 30 years. And the question was, would his policies continue? His successor, Nikita Khrushchev, trashed him in a speech, like after he died, and was named the secretary of the party, like Stalin was. People rebelled on him. And so as his rule went on, he ruled for 11 years as kind of like the next dictator, but people didn't really trust him. At first, he wanted to look for peace with the U.S., but the U.S. said no. And so then he shifted the goals to basically trying to outperform the United States economy and the industry. And he was responsible for the rift with China, responsible for initiating the space race, responsible for the the Berlin Wall and the Cuban Missile Crisis, all fall under Khrushchev. All right. But in 1964, the party got rid of him and put him on house arrest for the last 7 years of his life because he was not very well liked. And again, he didn't have the authority that Stalin had built up. Does that make sense, everyone? Again, I'm covering this faster than I want to, but this is just a speech. Basically, he says to the United States, if you don't agree with us, we're trying to be friends with you, then we're gonna bury you. That's aggressive, yes?
Mhm.
Yeah. And then this is him and JFK. And this was the example of brinkmanship. They actually lessened their hatred toward each other after the Berlin or after the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis. But Khrushchev thought he could manipulate JFK. Lastly here, things that I didn't cover, other domestic policies. This is going to be for your activity in class tomorrow. Nationalism, media anti-West, we talked about that. One thing we didn't talk about was restrictions on travel. Most Russians could not really leave like within 100 miles of their house. They were allowed to take summer vacations. They had like camps or summer camps or campgrounds where they could go. And really only a lot of like only the top party members had summer houses and vacation houses. 99% of people did not. And again, there was not the leisure activities that were in the United States. 6% of society was a party member or a cadre. And those are the ones that had special privileges. And I'm not going to talk about the downfalls. We'll talk about it next week in chapter 36. But a high rate of alcoholism and black markets and crime really started to take off in the 1970s and especially in the 1980s because people became growingly interested in the West and a better life. All right. So my last question for you is, and this is going to be pretty quick. Why did Mr. bring up the toaster more than 2 times today in class? What is it a metaphor for? So once you respond, the homework is very, very simple to follow. You're going to be taking your SAQ you wrote last night, and you're going to be color coding it, just following the directions that I have written on Canvas, okay, or on the Word doc. So it should probably take you 15 to 20 minutes. I would encourage you to start reading chapter 36. Do not put all your notes off to the last minute. And then again, Barron's book and essays. All right. It's a metaphor for communism. It's a metaphor for Western consumerism. So we have some different answers here. Toaster is a metaphor for communism in the Soviet Union. It's a metaphor for the people who bring new goods, ideas to a nation that have been starved of goods and items. Because he babysat for a baby whose father smuggled toasters into Russia. I need some other people to answer here, and I have to clean your desks, folks, so slow down. All right, Zoomers, check out the homework. It's on Canvas under 3-4. Have a great day, all right? Bye, folks.